I've been thinking about this idea of capital realism and how it's affected music and culture for a very, very long time. Like probably like 4 years now, but I didn't have a word for it. When I think about why underground music is the same, I cannot help but to think about Mark Fisher. When it boils down to it, right, I think the problem is capital realism. And I think that's why music has not changed much in the underground rap scene. And you can really say in all scenes of modern day music, bro. So if we look at the definition of capital realism, it says capital realism, a play on the term socialist realism, is an ideological framework for viewing capitalism and its effects on politics, economics, and public thought. It is widely regarded as Fisher's most consequential idea. Through his writings and numerous interviews with political bloggers and theorists, he continually expounded on the idea. According to Fisher, the quotation, in quotes, "It is easier to imagine an end of the world than the end of capitalism," captures the essence of capitalist realism. It is the prevailing notion that capitalism is the only viable economic system and thus there can be no other alternative. So if you don't read Mark Fisher, to sum up what this eventually leads to is something called the slow cancellation of the future, which basically entails the idea that everything that you can possibly imagine will never happen because we keep regurgitating culture in order to profit. As people, as businesses, as artists, no matter what we do, it's never going to change, even if it appears different on the surface level compared to the original art that it's actually tethered to. So I want you to think about something for a minute, right? I'm not sure if it was like gossip or like if it's fake, but they said that Ryan Gosling was casted as Ghost Rider. And everybody's like, man, this is super cool because like that's the equivalent of casting Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, right? The matching, the level of matching, that's good. But the level of matching is shitty if the entire idea is still regurgitated. Why are we still making remakes of remakes of remakes? We eventually get to a point where we're just existing to consume copies of a copy of a copy, and that's associated with another idea. But essentially you have the original material of raw essence. It can be an idea, an art form, a raw material, and then you make a copy on top of that where its original reality is no longer tethered to the real, and then you make a copy on top of the copy. So now reality has no tethering to the previous reality. And I think the main problem with music today is that like it honestly feels like I'm listening to a copy of a copy of a copy. Like when I hear Nine Vicious, I'm actually hearing like Young Thug. I'm actually hearing Young Thug through Cardi, but I'm also hearing just Young Thug at the same time. But I'm also hearing Nine Vicious. I'm hearing Nine Vicious' physical voice in the form of Young Thug with the rhythmic pattern of Cardi. Like it's a very weird thing to experience. When I was listening to people like XXX Tentacion's, Denzel Curry, Ski Mask, Slump God, just like the very prototype one SoundCloud rappers, they had dudes telling me when I was a young dude, bro, you're not listening to the original version of whoever you're listening to. That's actually Space Ghost Perp. And I'm like, how is XXX sounds nothing like Space Ghost Perp? And then I went to go listen to some old Space Ghost Perp shit, and I'm like, damn, the vibe is kind of the same. Like, I get it. So like a lot of these new leaders, or what almost became new leaders, because really a lot of people kind of died off after 2020. I mean, Trippie Redd had his run. Cardi had a crazy run. Lil Uzi was kind of always big, but he never like stepped into that next threshold of like superstardism. Eventually, everybody sort of died off, but they had children. And the children almost became bigger than the artists, but not really, because we were smart enough as a culture to remember the fact that, damn, Ken Carson is just rapping on very dark, grittier, whole lot of red beats, but he's still like a separate thing. Like Ken sounds nothing like Cardi, but like there's something in our minds that tether him to Cardi. I'm sure that has always been the case in music, and I think the problem is capitalist realism, right? The fact that we can't imagine another way of creating underground music again. I mean, I've listened to Blade. I've listened to the whole hyperpop shit. I've listened to the whole. I've listened to Netspin, bro. I remember just promo pages would just post them. So I watch modern, who was supposed to be leaders of the new school rappers, blow up in today's era. I remember the whole Summers and Can era with when Yeet wasn't even as big as Yeet is now. And I think Yeet is a perfect example of what I mean, because Yeet, in a sense, kind of represents this capitalist realism aspect where a lot of people started clowning him and saying his music was shitty after 2093, because it's like, bro, when he finally got to A Dangerous Lifestyle, everybody caught up to the fact that Yeet actually doesn't rap about anything. But we already knew he wasn't rapping about shit in 2093, and 2093 was a great album. He just don't have, like, first of all, another way capital realism peaks in Yeet's career is when you notice that he's trying to replicate this weird Kanye type of like theatric Mike Dean sound. And you can tell when artists are around other artists that do Mike Dean type shit, because their music starts sounding random, like they have intros that have no relation to their overall sound that they blew up from. It's like, why are you putting an opera singer in the background of like this low vibrating synth, and then out of nowhere you come on with distortion talking about how you got sucked up in the back of a Beamer? It's like, how does this correlate to this beautiful ass intro? So this is the main problem. I think it's not like, we can say it's TikTok, we can say it's Instagram, we can say that like niche cultures of the underground scene broke up into their own like subcultures, and now artists are just appealing to those subcultures. We can say that artists are now focused on just being streamers in general. That's another thing I noticed. So we talked about capitalist realism and how it relates to the underground music scene. We talked about capitalists can't even talk right now.